Hello, and it is the return of the National League Rugby preview show powered by Talking Rugby Union. Round 12's edition is here, but haven't National 1 and National 2 delivered so much already this season? Now, I'm guessing you all would probably have seen the recent headlines around English rugby, but what we will say is the standard of rugby that's been produced at levels 3 and 4, week in, week out, should always have the spotlight on it. And that's hopefully where the National League Rugby preview show comes in, as well, of course, as all of our 56 clubs. And maybe the community feel and the togetherness that we see so often across National League Rugby was best encapsulated a couple of weeks ago in round 11. Of course, Storm Burt battered the country, didn't it? And 7 games across National 1 and National 2 fell foul to the weather, but a strong core of volunteers and ground staff across many clubs, including the likes of Luctonians and Rotherham Titans, worked tirelessly to ensure that 75% of the games went ahead a couple of weeks ago in round 11. So we can only salute them, applaud them, and thank everybody for their efforts in getting so many of the games on across National 1 and National 2. Also, just a quick mention as well to both Fylde and Colchester, who were our featured clubs on the National League Rugby preview show in round 11. Frustratingly, Fylde's meeting with Leeds Sykes was one of the games that was postponed, and that was actually rescheduled for last weekend. So we might visit Fylde again later on in the season. But a big thanks to both clubs in terms of Fylde and Colchester for all their support and joining us on the show a couple of weeks ago. It is much appreciated. Now on to round 12 and on to this week, and we're actually back in National 2 North with Fylde's Lancashire rivals Preston Grasshoppers. Well, we'll be speaking to head coach Dan Orwin, and we'll also be joined by a special guest in the former Sale Sharks director of rugby, Alex Sanderson. Now, for those who don't know, Alex played for Preston Grasshoppers in his formative years, and of course, he still has quite a strong bond with the club because of his role through Sale as director of rugby. So we had a chat with Alex as well as Dan about the importance of developing players in National League Rugby, as well as why our clubs should be at the heart of their communities, which I know so many clubs are up and down the country. So that is to come. But our first focus will be in National 1 and on the National 1 title race, because December is set to be a huge month towards the top of the third tier. Our other featured club this week is Rams RFC, who entertain Richmond under the Friday night lights at Old Bath Road in what should be a mouth-watering top of the table clash to get things started in round 12. Both clubs are level on points, with Richmond currently at the summit, but we wanted to get the Rams perspective, so we spoke to CEO Gary Reynolds and director of rugby Seb Reynolds ahead of what is set to be a massive game in Berkshire on Friday night. And that game, by the way, is also being live streamed via our friends at Next Gen 15. So if you can't make it to Old Bath Road on Friday evening, you'll be able to watch the game for free on Next Gen 15's YouTube channel. All the details will be across our social media channels, and the link to Next Gen 15's YouTube channel and to the game itself will be in the description of this video below. But Rams and Next Gen 15 have come together to live stream this contest, and as I say, you can watch it for free, and it's going to be an absolute belter hopefully on Friday evening between Rams and Richmond. So let's just try and paint a picture of the current situation then in National 1 going into round 12. So last time out in round 11, Rams entered that particular weekend with 10 wins from 10 to their name and at the top of National 1 when they travelled to Rotherham Titans looking to extend that record. Now, third place Rotherham had lost just once at home in the last 19 months, and the Clifton Lane factor, the home of Rotherham Titans, continued against Rams as the Titans showed their mettle to record an excellent 21-14 victory. Aidan Shortall's try proving decisive for Harvey Billion's side, and it was a brilliant result for Rotherham given all the weather disruptions that week due to the impact of Storm Burt. And that was for Rams, a first defeat of the season, and that defeat opened the door for Richmond, who snuck themselves to the top of National 1 following a gritty 21-6 win over 12th placed Sedgley Park. Rob Powell's side found themselves 6-0 down, but they flicked the switch, didn't they, in the second half to maintain their unbeaten record so far this term and register a 10th win of the season. So what does that mean then for the table going into such a big month in terms of the National 1 title race? It means that with Rams and Richmond taking on each other on Friday night, both teams are currently level on 49 points, but Richmond are top because they have a larger number of draws than Rams as things stand. So it is really, really fine margins at the moment between the division's top two, as we said, who play each other on Friday night. 6 points now separates the top three, with Roslyn Park in the top four after they returned to winning ways following a tight 33-29 victory over Plymouth Albion last time out. Just to quickly focus on the bottom of the table, where there was a huge result in round 11 for Leicester Lions, who claimed their second victory of the season away at Sale FC. They won 15-12 in awful weather conditions in the northwest, and it was Charlie Davis' score that sealed the win for Gareth Collins' side, and it was a big result for the Lions, considering they were being beaten by table rivals Darlington, Moden Park and Esher earlier in November, and it means they are now level on points with Sedgley Park and 2 behind Esher. But let's bring it back to the top of the table, where, as we've mentioned, Rams take on Richmond on Friday night under the lights at Old Bath Road, and Rams are one of our featured clubs this week on the National League Rugby preview show. Now, Seb Reynolds' side, for those who followed National 1 over the last few seasons, have been right up there, haven't they? And in 3 of the last 4 seasons, they've been involved in a title race, and they've also finished in second place. They were involved in an epic title battle in 2022-23 with Cambridge and Sale FC, where they were just picked to the poach. And if you rewind the clock back to 2019-20, when that season was curtailed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Rams were battling with Richmond as well as Roslyn Park for the title. And yet again, the Berkshire outfit find themselves firmly in the mix going into another Christmas period. So we wanted to catch up with CEO Gary Reynolds and Director of Rugby Seb Reynolds ahead of arguably the biggest game of domestic rugby this weekend.
Almost build on the excitement. Firstly, you have to adjust your training schedule in the week, and you sort of you inform the players that you've got a Friday night game. We let them know a couple of months back. I think Richmond have been fantastic with this, and I think both sets of players just love it. And so when we announced to the squad we were doing a Friday night game against Richmond, they're really excited. And then it builds up, and of course now you've got first versus second, and that adds another element to it. So when the lights come on, the intensity builds up, the atmosphere comes in a bit. Hopefully we can have a fantastic crowd down here to put on a good showcase for the league.
Well, this is probably the biggest game in the club's history. We've had a few of those in recent years, which has been exciting, because I still feel that when we're in this league, we're stepping in the footprints of giants. People like Richmond, Blackheath, Roslyn Park, Sale, Moseley, Plymouth, these guys have been there, done it for such a long time. And I think we always feel we're the newcomers. And believe it or not, I think there's a bit of imposter syndrome at Rams. You kind of pinch yourself and you realise you're playing these guys. But they're great contests with these teams, and I think it'll be a great advert for National League Rugby.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned it there, Seb, that it's obviously a top of the table clash, and from a neutral point of view, the script seems to be written so perfectly. The top two, Friday night, etc., level on points. But I know from your perspective and Gary's perspective, you probably would have liked a couple of elements and details to be changed, given kind of the results that happened in round 11. So how has the last 2 weeks been for you, Seb, in terms of preparing for this game?
Yeah, it's been sort of as expected, really. I think you always look at the game you got ahead, and obviously we knew we'd have the break week after Rotherham. I think Rotherham was a really interesting game. I think that the side that deserved to win on the day got the victory. They fully deserved their win. It was tough, inclement weather, and I felt we were very strong in the first half an hour, and just fell away. We had a couple of opportunities, a couple of errors, and then in games like that, it just won't. Those things will come back to bite you in the bum. So, you move on. I think our lads are very good at moving on. The most important thing is you don't get overly excited when you win a game, and you don't get too down when you lose. Just crack on with improving, and what better way than to have a break week and then get excited for a Friday night.
You're going to get hugely motivated when you get a top of the table clash, and this is obviously what we got this Friday. But the only thing I would say is being around this squad is it wouldn't matter whether we had a top of the table clash or not. Seb's right; these guys move on. You've got some very, very talented young players coming through with great mindsets, and you've got some older players in there who are helping those younger players learn, that have been there, done it. So we're very fortunate with this squad, who are a pleasure to be around. And I think they'd have put what happened at Rotherham behind them. They would have said, as Seb said, on the day, Rotherham thoroughly deserved that. So that's just one of those things. And then you get on with it. But it is convenient that you're coming off. I guess the monkey off the back that you've won every game is now gone, and it's just down to a toe-to-toe with the other top club on a Friday night. So what's not to love about that?
And Gary, just sticking with you and with Rams, sticking to those principles and working on those levels of dedication and working hard each and every season. If I know we're talking ahead of such a big game for Richmond against Richmond and a big month as well this coming up for Rams, do you feel like the club is ready to potentially take that step if it was to come this season? Do you think, or?
Yes, absolutely. I think that. I've been asked, aren't you disappointed? Second 3 times of the 4 seasons, and the answer every time is no. We finished second in 2019, 2020, and our target for that year was 4th from bottom. Because if we finished 4th from bottom, we survived. So it was always going up from tier 4 was to go up and survive. And we did that and some. And I think that was through probably the lesson we'd learned coming from tier 5 to tier 4, where it was really difficult. We didn't want to repeat that. So we really went for it and surprised ourselves. And we've done that each of the last 3 seasons. A lot of it's been focusing on player development. And a lot of those young players are coming through now. And they're the mainstays of the team. But it takes a considerable amount of effort from the club, from the coaching and management team, from the players themselves to be competitive. And you have to have everybody looking in the same direction. So yeah, it's a fantastic challenge, but I think that's what we love about it, Chris. It's just it demands more of all of us, and that's exciting.
Someone asked me in the summer, who do you think the competition is, and who do you think will be up towards the top of the league? And then I ended up naming about 6, 7, 8 teams. And so was that everyone then? But that's just the quality of the level. I think when you get into a week like this, the main focus has to be on what you're trying to achieve throughout the game. So what's fantastic about Friday is that you can get wrapped up, and so we should, in the storylines around it. And I think all the R's are going quite well at the moment. Rams, Rotherham, and Richmond, and Ruston Park are strong as well. So it's really interesting, and that's a storyline around it. And there's lots of narratives that are built up around these games, and so they should be. It's absolutely brilliant for this league to have that. But from our perspective, from a coaching perspective and a player's perspective, we're 3 days out from a top encounter, and that focus must purely be on that right now.
Yeah, and just bringing it back to the Friday night occasion, Gary, I mentioned when we had a quick chat last Friday that it is European weekend this year, so there isn't any top flight domestic rugby. And I was having a quick look at the championship fixtures, and they don't get underway till Saturday. So the spotlight of domestic rugby will be on Old Bath Road on Friday night. So there has been some negative headlines around English rugby over the last week and so, but this game between Rams and Richmond, it should shine a light on what is so good about our sport, shouldn't it?
Yeah. And just for the record, there's too much negative on English rugby. You know, the sport is in its infancy as a pro game. It's going to get better. The RFU can feel Twickenham. Some of those, I know we came on the wrong side as a country of those internationals, but some of the games were brilliant. There's been some brilliant Premiership fixtures. There's been some great Premiership Cup games. There's a lot good going on, and I know there's a few issues, but I think there's loads and loads of good stuff happening in the game and great young players coming through that makes it all very, very exciting. You know, it's we want to be part of that future, that bright future. It's great that we're kind of the top English game on Friday night, and it will be streamed, so anybody that can't make the game can hop in and have a watch of some really good National League rugby. And I know I'm preaching to convert with you, Chris, but yeah, national leagues, National One, National Two. You know, there's lots of talks around things that need to change at Premiership and Championship, but very rarely does anybody talk about needing to change at National One and National Two, because they're great formats, well structured, well competed, and it works. So yeah, happy days.
Yeah, absolutely, Gary. And just a couple more from me, guys. Seb, on Richmond on Friday night, of course, both of you sides have won 10 games. And so what have you kind of made of them this season? I think Rob's spoken a lot about kind of the consistency element and refinding that might have been absent from their season last year. So what have you kind of made of their sort of start that they've made?
Yeah, and you can definitely see they've added that. I think they've been very strong, very solid team so far. They're doing a lot of things well. They have very good strength in their pack. The set piece is good. They've got some very dangerous, back five players, and their back line looks strong. So, there's a reason why they are where they are, and and we're not able to review any games they've lost. So you have to try and find what you can find, and and that's what makes it an exciting game. So no, I think they've had a superb start to the season. They're looking very strong, and it'll be a challenge.
All I'd say is that Richmond will be wanting to win this every bit as much as we do. I think it's going to be a great spectacle for NLR. I think the two teams going head to head, and I think that's probably the most important thing if we want our game to develop. That it's showcasing itself and showing what it can be like. And if everybody as clubs puts the leagues first, we'll go a long, long way.
As always, great to catch up with Gary and Seb ahead of what will be a special night at Old Bath Road on Friday. I know Rams are really keen to smash their previous attendance record, which is 1,284. They're putting a lot of effort in getting people down to Old Bath Road on Friday night. Gates open at 5:30, so you can finish work, drop your things off at home and get straight down to the ground to soak up the atmosphere. But if you are unable to make it to Berkshire on Friday night, Rams have linked up with Next Gen 15 to live stream the game. It is free to watch on YouTube, and a link to the game will be in the description of this show on YouTube, and also it'll be all over our social media channels, so you'll see plenty of us pushing the link to Friday night's game across our various different platforms. And we are lucky enough to actually be joining Next Gen 15 on Friday night, and we cannot wait to be a part of the occasion at Old Bath Road. And it really is the start of a big couple of weeks for both clubs, with Rams actually visiting fourth place Roslin Park next Saturday, while Richmond host third place Rotherham Titans in round 13. And in fact, Richmond end this block before Christmas by also taking on local rivals Roslin Park. So it just highlights what a big month December will be in the National One title race, and what that picture will look like going into 2025. So let's just have a look at the other fixtures then on Saturday, away from the big match on Friday night, and we'll jump down actually to Rotherham Titans, who, as we said, sit third in the table and host Blackheath this weekend at Clifton Lane. Back-to-back home games for Rotherham, but Blackheath come into this one in fifth place, having won 4 of their last 5 games. As for 4th place, Rosslyn Park, they travel to Sedgley Park, who will be desperate to have an upturn in fortunes before the Christmas break. Sedge currently sit 12th at the moment, and in fact, the Tigers have only won 4 games this calendar year, but they have all the tools to improve on that. Whether that will happen against a side in the top 4, we'll have to wait and see. Going back to the top of our list of fixtures then, Birmingham Moseley welcome Esher to the Midlands. Moseley were actually in action last Saturday against Darlington Moden Park after their game from round 11 was quickly rearranged, and Adam Balding's side showed their cutting edge to secure a 24-7 win away from home. Bishop Stortford welcomed Sale FC to Silver Lees. Stortford come into this one off the back of back-to-back wins and are in the top half of the table, so they'll be keen to pick up from where they left off against the Sale side, who lost all 3 of their matches in November. One of those defeats for Sale was against Leicester Lions, as we mentioned earlier on in our National 1 chat, and Gareth Collins' 13th place side will be aiming to build on that when they host 10th place Stings Crusaders this weekend. And last but not least, bottom of the table, Darlington Moden Park will make the 758-mile round trip to Plymouth Albion on Saturday, hoping for an away day to remember as they go in search of just their 2nd victory of the campaign. So we begin National 2 this week in National 2 East, and round 11 feels like an age ago, but what a round it was, starting at the top where league leaders Tunbridge Julian saw their perfect record come to an end away at Bury St Edmunds, the hosts winning 32-21 with second half scores from Tristan Andrews and Ewan Rees, halting a 3-match losing streak for Jacob Ford's side. In terms of TJs, they actually departed Suffolk empty-handed, meaning their lead at the top remains at 4 points, and second place Dorking actually have a game in hand now after their fixture against Guernsey Raiders was postponed due to the impact of Storm Bert. So a big weekend it was in round 11 in National 2 East towards the top, and the same can be said towards the bottom, which included a first victory of the term for Worthing, who moved off the foot of the table with a 2014 win away at table rivals Colchester. Now, solid defence and an excellent set piece were the backbone of this win for Worthing. And in truth, it felt like a victory wasn't too far away from Worthing, didn't it? With the amount of bonus points they've been able to collect despite being on the wrong end of the scorelines. But they found themselves on the right side of the result in round 11. And they will now begin December with a spring in their step and a first win under their belt. And next up for Worthing is another huge game against 12th place Sevenoaks on Saturday afternoon. Now, Sevenoaks are 1 position above Worthing in the table after their excellent 14-12 derby victory over Westcombe Park last time out. We know Westcombe Park hasn't been an easy place for visiting teams to go since Westcombe Park were actually promoted into National 2 East last season. So that tells you all you need to know about how big that victory was for Sevenoaks and Adam Bowman's side, who, of course, lost to Colchester in round 10. So it was an excellent reaction and an excellent result for Sevenoaks last time out. So what it means for the table then going into this weekend is that Worthing swap places in the standings with Colchester in round 11, and they are now just 1 point behind Sevenoaks going into Saturday's mega clash in West Sussex. At the top, TJ's first loss of the season has given fresh hope to the chasing pack. Barnes moved up to 3rd last time out with a 13-10 win over Old Albanian, while the form of 5th place Henley Hawks continued. Luke Allen's side clinched a dramatic 6th victory on the bounce as a late Spencer Hayhow try was brilliantly converted by Max Titchener to seal a 17-16 win over Canterbury. You can see the state of the weather at Dry Lees a couple of weeks ago, but it was another late win for Henley, which keeps them heading in the right direction. So on to the fixtures then, the first set of fixtures for this festive season in National 2 East, where Barnes and Bury St Edmunds meet in the capital. Both clubs come into round 12 off the back of good victories, and Barnes are actually unbeaten in their last 3 home games against Bury St Edmunds. 6th place Canterbury take on Oxford Harlequins. Oxford Quins were 17-7 up against Havant in round 11, but fell to a 22-17 home defeat. And when you combine the fact that both Sevenoaks and Worthing picked up wins in round 11, it just pulled Pete Davis' side closer to the relegation fight. So can they begin December with a positive result? Colchester are one of the clubs in the fight towards the bottom, and Mike Hayward's side will be aiming to bounce back from their round 11 setback when they go to Guernsey on Saturday, but that is easier said than done though, with the Raiders winning all 6 of their home games thus far. Second place Dorking go to Havant, aiming for a 10th straight win. The informed team in National 2 East will have been buoyed to see title rivals Tunbridge Judeans slip up in round 11, but the real test is if they can continue to put the pressure on when they visit Hooks Lane. Not an easy place for visiting teams to go. Really good atmosphere down there, but Dorking are in great form and will be hoping to extend their winning run. Elsewhere, Old Albanian host Westcombe Park, with both sides in need of a bit of early Christmas cheer. Away's winless in 5, while Westcombe Park have won just once in the same time period. And we finish with 2 early Christmas crackers as well. At the Slade, Tunbridge Judeans will be looking for an immediate reaction at home to an informed Henley, while, as we said before, Worthing have the opportunity to move out of the bottom 2 when they entertain Sevenoaks on what is set to be a big afternoon for both teams. Over to National 2 North now, where the 3 rearranged games that took place last Saturday due to the postponements in round 11 certainly had an impact on the state of play as we prepare to enter round 12 this weekend. And we'll start at the bottom, and we'll start with Harrogate, who began last Saturday afternoon in 14th place at the bottom of National 2 North, but picked up a thoroughly deserved 39-7 win over Otley. Just a second victory of the season for Martin Wood and Dan Scarborough's men. And in fact, 11 of the 20 points they have accumulated so far this term have come in the last 4 games. So have Harrogate now turned a corner at a crucial stage in the season, with the midway point of the term not too far away at all. Elsewhere, Sheffield Tigers also began the day in the bottom 2 alongside Harrogate, and whilst they are still in the bottom 2, it is off the back of an excellent 29-15 win against table rivals Hull. Now, Jack Howerson's side scored 20 unanswered points in the second half to seal their second success of the season, and like Harrogate, the majority of their points they picked up this term have come in the last month of steps in the right direction for both Sheffield Tigers and Harrogate in what is becoming an increasingly tight bottom half of National 2 North. And before we show you the standings, we also wanted to look back at the other fixture that took place last weekend between Leeds Tykes and 4th placed Fylde, and with league leaders Lim picking up another bonus point victory to continue their perfect start to the campaign in round 11, and title rival Sheffield also picking up a maximum. The Tykes might have felt like they had a bit of pressure on them to get a result at Woodlands, and my goodness me, didn't Pete Seaborn's side show immense determination and immense character to seal a 22-17 bonus point victory in Lancashire, which also ended Fylde's unbeaten home record. And as it was well documented before the game, wasn't it? The Leeds Tykes lost there at Woodlands last season, which shows again why it's a brilliant result for Leeds Tykes. And what it means for the table then heading into this weekend is Leeds are moved back above Sheffield up to second place, with the top 3 separated by just 5 points, while at the bottom, just look how close it is as we approach the midway point of the season. 8 points separating the bottom half, with Billingham dropping to the foot of the table due to the results of Sheffield Tigers and Harrogate last weekend. And at the top of the bottom half, if that makes sense, are 8th placed Hull Ionians, and they visit our second feature club on the National League Rugby preview show this week in the form of 7th placed Preston Grasshoppers. Now, Preston are certainly making strides forward under head coach Dan Orwin, who took the role as head coach at the start of this season. But internally, Hoppers may feel they could actually be in the top 6 heading into December if one or two tight scorelines they experienced at the start of the season had fallen their way. But as it stands, Hoppers currently 7th as they prepare to welcome Hull Ionians to Lightfoot Green on Saturday. But something a little bit different this week on the National League Rugby Preview Show, whilst discussing the season so far for Preston, and of course looking ahead to this weekend's game against Hull Ionians, we wanted to highlight the important role clubs like Preston play in their region when it comes to developing players, whilst also being the heart of their community. Now, I know head coach Dan Orwin is massively passionate about this, and in terms of developing the right culture at Preston as well. And it is a view shared by former Hopper and current Sale Sharks director of rugby, Alex Sanderson. And Alex kindly gave up some of his time last week to have a chat with us on the National League Rugby Preview Show about all of the things we've just mentioned. So here is our feature on Preston, which is a mixture of conversations with Sale Director of Rugby Alex Sanderson and, of course, Preston Grasshoppers head coach Dan Orwin.
I went to Hoppers from Littleborough when I was 12 years old, and absolutely loved it. Some of my fondest memories of playing with Steve Borthwick, Ian Bowshaw, John Kirkpatrick, who's head of S&C here, was all for that same team at Hoppers. Mal, who was the coach at the time, I'm still in touch with. He texts me after big wins and now and again for the odd ticket, and I go down for the formal events that they asked me to go down to, which I can make. Like, it's still a big part of my personality pie, in that sense. Foul Coast's such a breeding ground for rugby talent, and you know, I think that the majority of professional rugby players, you do their own stats, but I've been told this comes from the north. So it means you need like clubs that can service the amount of rugby players so they're able to make the transition through grassroots into the professional game. We have that with Hoppers, we have it with Sedge, we've got a good relationship with Caldy, Donny and Coventry, Fylde, Lim, Rosendale. These are all clubs that our players actually coach and have coached in the past. Byron coached Preston, Byron McBrien, as well as Rosendale this year. So not only are they important for our players to go and blood themselves, but they're also important for our older players who coach, who are looking to get into coaching as well down the line. That's so important. And we're lucky up north to have so many. More and more when I look around and realise the influence that we can have, not, you know, locally, regionally. It's humbling and brilliant. It's the best part of the job.
I was going to say, Alex, like, you know, you mentioned the players and coaches there, but how important are these clubs to the ecosystem of Northern rugby as well? I know, you know, some games that, you know, I've been down to Sale Sharks and the crowds have been fantastic, and that sometimes filters into those National 1, National 2 games as well. So how important are these clubs to be hubs of community to keep growing the game in the region?
I can't stress, like, more and more often, because of the negative slant that's been portrayed in the media around the lawsuit that's pending with the WRU, less and less mums are taking the sons or the daughters to the local club to play rugby, like less and less. And it breaks me, like, because it's such a good game for sport, but in terms of culture as well. Like, you get so much more out of this culturally by way of having to work within a team through discipline and all that, and respecting the ref than any other sport that I've bore witness to. And I'm biased, obviously. So for it to have like community hubs, and it's not just a rugby club, but a community hub that Preston is, where you learn to play a sport, but they keep mates for life, like I have with Kirky. You know, that relationship where you can look back and with some fondness of formative years, where there wasn't the stress of professional rugby around. Like it's life defining. Yeah, it makes kids into boys and boys into men. Like I truly believe that. Clubs like that do, and we've had Hoppers coaches down last year. We've got a couple playing for them this year, and the relationship will remain to be strong as long as have some influence here. That we will strive to form stronger relationships with all the clubs in the local vicinity.
I'm really proud to be the head coach of Preston Grasshoppers, and the players are really proud to play for the club. So often it's about revisiting those traditions and thinking, well, actually, I'm quite philosophical about this. I think as a coach, your time at a club's quite finite, isn't it? And I think you have to respect kind of the people who've been in that position before as a coach or as a player. The people who've worn that shirt before. I think you have to be really respectful of that and what it means to a lot of people as well. And know that you're only there for a short time. So, it's about doing it the best that you can and keeping some of those traditions and cultures and really wanting to push on as well. I guess we've pushed really hard with the culture, with the players. And I know a lot of coaches talk about culture. It's often a bit of a throwaway thing. Culture, it's got to be positive. Well, yeah, obviously. But I think I genuinely believe that the culture is important. Getting the right people on the bus, as it were, as well, around making sure the right people are in place. People understanding the roles, knowing what the team expect as well would be a big one for us. And then I think revisiting that, because it's all right having a culture, but if you only mention it in pre-season, then it gets lost. So we revisit that fairly regularly. I think we're doing a good job at the minute of reviewing each month. We're taking each month as it comes, each block of games, and we're doing quite a good job of reviewing that with the players and setting some targets for the next month as well. So I think there's been quite a bit, to be fair. As you said, it's my first year at Hoppers as head coach, and yeah, it comes with a big workload and probably a lot of expectation as well. So yeah, coaches working really, really hard behind the scenes to make sure that we're in the best possible place to work up the table.
And I guess, maybe the different side of the spectrum, Dan, is kind of developing players as well. Of course, you want to have that success. You want to move up the table. But I know you mentioned before we hit record that you're obviously involved in the North of England under-18 setup as well. So how important is it for you as a head coach to also not only develop a culture where the players are enjoying themselves, but develop the players themselves to potentially take that next step or develop into a lasting player at Preston Grasshoppers?
I'm huge on developing the players that we've got. I mentioned before, and part of that development is around developing things like role clarity, the players understanding what is required of their role and what the team need from them as well. And I guess, me as a coach, that's probably my bread and butter. I think I'd be quite proud that I'm able to develop the players and work on a one-to-one basis in some instances with players, reviewing where they're at and things. And I think, we've got evidence of that this year already. So, there's players in our first team, thinking about Deck Norrington, Ewan Naylor, Harry Holden, top try scorer in the league off the back of the drive mauls. Like, they're three players that didn't get a great deal of first team rugby last season or the season before, and the players that we've kind of recognised actually with work. These players have got exactly the attitudes that we want from a Preston Grasshoppers player. They've got the right behaviours, they're driving the right habits and training, and with a little bit of work and a little bit of development, then those guys are going to be top players for Hoppers. And two of those guys have just hit 50 caps this year. So yeah, we're really quite proud of that. We're bringing a lot of young players too as well. So we've got a couple of young players. Jack Lightyler, who's our player of the season last year, is injured currently, but Owen Williams is another one that we're working with, a young player. We've got Ben Hay. All these lads are 19. Lots and lots of exciting talent. Just need a little bit of guidance, a little bit of development. But we'll back them and we'll go with them. We'll give them opportunities if we think they're ready.
It's clear your passion there for developing these players, Dan, is tenfold just listening to you. But Preston aren't the only club who do this, but how important is our clubs like your Prestons, your Fields, your National League clubs in general to the development of these young players, not only within the system, but I know in the Northwest, Sale Sharks are very much a part of the ecosystem. But how important do the roles of these national clubs play in the development of young players, do you think?
I think it's absolutely huge, and it's often understated, it's often overlooked. But I think, I didn't mention the link with Sale, but we've got a great link with Sale. We have I think three dual registered players at the minute, so three of their talented young players are coming to us to get their rugby exposure. I think it's huge.
They're very much spoon fed here. Like, you try and take everything away from them. so they can just focus on their own game. When they go to a champ club on a Tuesday night, having trained during that day, and a Thursday, a champ or a national team, they've got to give themselves wholly to a different environment, to a different set of principles, and then understand that they've got to do that every week. Like that's the biggest shift that a schoolboy can make from amateur schoolboy rugby to professional rugby, is the consistency in which they're able to apply themselves week in, week out, with, and there still is consequence of the weekend, with consequence of older men holding them accountable. You know, they come from being superstars since they were 14, scoring 4 tries a game, to getting beaten up when they're 18. And that's the biggest learning curve for them. And without those clubs, they wouldn't have that ability to play, to fail, to reflect and grow.
The national leagues are so important in terms of developing the players of the future, if that makes sense, and giving them the exposure that they need. Because it's a good level, isn't it? I mean, National 1, National 2, you share the try-lights each week. There's some phenomenal rugby being played in the national leagues, and it needs to be celebrated more, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100% agree with you, Dan. And I don't think anybody who's connected with National League Rugby will disagree with what you just said about there in terms of celebrating the rugby and celebrating these players that do have that commitment week in, week out over the course of a 26-game campaign. But we are hitting the halfway mark of the season, Dan. And obviously, first up for you guys is Hull Ionians. I mean, what would you like to see from Preston during this kind of December period, this Christmas period? Because I'm guessing maybe consistency might be something you guys are wanting to put your finger on a little bit.
Yeah, I think that'd be exactly it. I mean, we're going into Saturday off the back of, well, for us, a bad run. We've lost the last 2, and we've not picked a league point out of either of the last 2 either, which is really frustrating for us, especially based on what I'd said before. You know, we want to be winning games, and to not pick up points away at Wharfdale, we didn't play particularly well, and home to Sheffield, we did some great stuff in the second half, but we left it too late to get anything out of that. So yeah, for me, it's definitely consistency around. Consistency of effort, consistency of performance as well, and we know if we can get that right, Saturday should be a good day for us. I think, yeah, in comparison to last year and the year before, as you said, we finished 11th. So current league position is much more respectable, much kind of, and I think probably in terms of how we're feeling about it, probably a little bit frustrated. I think if you look at some of our the really close results that we've had, the first 2 games losing by 2 points, and Tynedale at home, we not being able to hold on in the last couple of minutes for a win there. I think if we get over the line with those games, and you're probably maybe talking about sitting 4th or 3rd potentially. So yeah, I guess we're happy with the progress that we're making in relation to last year, but we've probably still got some work to do, if that makes sense. But in terms of our focuses for December, I mean, we've got 2 home games. We've got obviously Ionians at home on Saturday, 1 below us in the table. We've got Lim away, and as you know, Lim are absolutely flying at the minute, which is, credit to the work that they're doing there. I know the forwards coach, Mark Williams, there really well, and I know the work that they're doing. And, I think they've surprised everybody this season, Lim. So if we can go there, we want to be confident that we can get a result there as well. Ultimately, somebody's got to beat them one day. I'm hoping they're not going to go the whole season unbeaten. Why can't it be us at their place on an AGP, which we used to playing on? And then Fylde at home, that's it's not, they're all big games, don't get me wrong, but I think that's the one that people, when the fixture list is announced at the start of the season, in our area, when a Fylde playing Hoppers, so that's always got a bit of extra spice as well, being the Christmas game at Hoppers this year for the first time in a couple of years. So consistency, if we can get through these next 3 games with a decent amount of league points, would be really happy going into Christmas break.
So massive thanks to Dan for his time this week. And of course, a huge thanks to Alex and the Sale Sharks media team for helping us with that segment of the show. And we know that Preston aren't the only team across National League Rugby who help develop players who may have come on loan from a Premiership side, or develop players who are currently in the system at a National League Rugby club. But it's always nice to hear and great to hear that the views of a National League Rugby club are shared by a current Premiership director of rugby. So a big thanks again to Dan and Alex for their time. And I'm sure Dan and everybody at Preston would appreciate your support on Saturday against Hull Ionians if you're in and around the area of Lightfoot Green, and I'm sure they would appreciate it as well if you're able to turn out on December the 21st when Preston welcome Fylde to Lightfoot Green for the Christmas Lancashire derby. Always brilliant occasions, that final game before we break for Christmas, and around 1,500 people were actually at the reverse game between Preston Grasshoppers and Fylde at Woodlands back in September, and both games last season had really healthy crowds too. And as we say, it's always a great occasion, so get yourself down to Lightfoot Green on December the 21st for a full day of entertainment with, of course, the 80 minutes of National 2 North rugby taking centre stage. And just one final thing to mention from a Preston perspective, great work from the club who raised over £1,000 for November last month down there, sporting an excellent moustache, and all the efforts, of course, by Preston go to a brilliant cause. So well done to them across the course of November. So then, let's have a look at the rest of the fixtures that are taking place in round 12 in National 2 North. And the aforementioned Fylde will be looking to bounce back from successive defeats when they travel to bottom of the table. Billingham, the hosts, looking to halt a run of 5 straight losses against another tough opposition. So a big game for both sides there. A big game also towards the bottom with 12th place Hull hosting Harrogate. Hull level on points with 13th place Sheffield Tigers, but are outside the bottom 2 because they have won one more game than the Tigers, so they'll be desperate to increase that tally against the table rival in Harrogate. Speaking of Sheffield Tigers, they travel to second place Leeds Tigers, but as we repeatedly say on this show, the Tigers' home record is superb. They actually haven't lost on their own patch since Plymouth Albion beat them in National 1 back in April 2023, so that is a task facing Sheffield this weekend. Elsewhere, Otley welcomed Tynedale to Cross Green. After 8 games without a win to begin this season, it was an unbeaten November for Tyne, which included 2 away wins against Sheffield Tigers and Hull Ionians, respectively. Current coach and former Premiership player Carl Ferns pulled on the boots in round 11 for Tyne and posted this photo after their 16-12 win away at Hull Ionian. So can the feel-good factor continue this weekend for Carl and those of a Tynedale persuasion? Preston Grasshoppers versus Hull Ionians, we've mentioned the eyes themselves looking to respond in that one after back-to-back defeats. And arguably one of the picks of the weekend in National 2 North sees third place Sheffield host league leaders Lim. Just 5 points separate the two teams. Lim are the only club in National League Rugby with a 100% record of 11 bonus point wins to their name. Sheffield have lost just once at home in just under 14 months. So when you add all of that up, it has all the ingredients to be a brilliant contest in South Yorkshire between 2 of the top 3. And I'm sure second place Leeds Tigers will be keeping tabs on the outcome at Aberdale Park. Should be a brilliant game, that one, between Sheffield and Lim. And finally, Wharfdale, who have won their last 3 games at the Avenue, entertain 6th place Chester, who will be keen to translate their excellent recent home form onto the road. And we finish in National 2 West this week. And as you can see, I am joined this week by a guest in the form of freelance sports journalist and photographer with the rugby paper, Josh Thomas, who I know has been following this division very closely this season. So Josh, welcome along to the show, and thanks so much for joining us.
No problem at all. Thank you for inviting me on. It's much appreciated.
No, it's brilliant to get kind of your insight into National 2 West, Josh. And I'm sure you would have seen last Saturday's rearranged fixture and the results between league leaders Camborne and Cinderford, with the table toppers suffering their first setback since the end of September as they were beaten 43-24 at Dockham Road. I mean, first and foremost, Josh, what did you kind of make of that scoreline? I think the second part of the question, how big could this be going into kind of the second half of the season?
First off, it's quite surprising for them to lose by 43 points. I know they've been quite sound defensively, but we've had some big results this season. For example, Red Roof early in the season when they beat Luctonians. I don't think Luctonians had lost before then, and then Red Roof, who of course had been pushing away, got that victory. It just shows how close this league is. Camborne, the lowest points um, after Luctonians, actually, funny enough, with 275 points conceded. So their defence is really good. To come into the game and with 9 wins from 10 games is exceptional, really. And we should be looking at what they had. Well, I know the scoreline at the end of the day is what you reflect, and I have no doubt they'll bounce back. But for 9 wins in 10 games before that is an incredible achievement.
Yeah, I think you're very right to highlight that, Josh, in terms of kind of both sides of the ball for Camborne. They've been excellent in attack this season. They've also been strong in defence, as you say, which probably highlights the brilliant job that fourth place Cinderford did last weekend. I know hooker Nathan Taylor scored his 100th National League Rugby try, so congratulations to him. But a fantastic win for Cinderford. And as Josh says there, it just shows the quality of National 2 West, which continues to produce week in, week out. And I know that result means Camborne are now 6 points clear at the top of the table after Taunton defeated Macclesfield 55-33 away from home last week. The Titans moving back up to second and level on points with third place Clifton. So just as we just mentioned there, just to bring up the table in front of me and Josh, confirmation that Camborne do remain top, but now 9 points separates that cluster of teams at the summit of the table. And at the bottom, round 11 saw Devonport Services secure a consecutive home wins, arguably their best performance of the campaign, saw them defeat Loughborough Students 17-0. It's now 2 victories it was in November for Ben Russell's side, which just gives them a platform to work from going into the Christmas period. So we've kind of touched on Camborne at the top of the table there, Josh, but is anybody, when you've been on your travels this year in National 2 West, that's stood out for you? Any other sides that are kind of impressed elsewhere in National 2 West?
I have to say Redroof. I went there back a few weeks ago when they played Lictonians. We mentioned, of course, that was the game they actually ended Lictonians' run of 4 games. I enjoyed going to Lictonians last year as well. Some really good teams, but Redroof this season just shown how great they are. They're a great club, great people. But what I really was impressed was that fact that week before they had lost to Old Reds, they gave everything, 40-38 up with about minutes to go, and Old Reds came back and made it 45-40. A real sickener, and there were players on the pitch absolutely destroyed by that in a way. They gave everything, and they just felt to lose that after giving everything was just massive, massive disappointment. But to come back the week later and go on a week themselves and to beat Liftonians 38-29, I think it was incredible. Clifton, 6 wins. The record speaks for themselves. And of course, coming up, I think they're playing Camborne on this Saturday. So it couldn't have come at a better time for them. We're going to see the character of what Camborne have against the league's informed team. And again, we can talk about later just how great it is, but it's going to be a real to get 6 wins in this league. I think it's the best one of the season, or one of the best, and it's just incredible. But I always have time for Hornets as well. Back-to-back promotions a couple of years ago. I think their quest is to stay in the league. They've done that. They've rebuilt. They've strengthened. And then this season, to start the season with 4 wins out of 5, and I think their only defeat in that was Camborne. So not a mean team. And I know they haven't won in 3, but they have done really well. I think I think last season to finish 12 and now they're 9th position at the moment just shows the great work that the likes of Jack Gad, John Richardson, and all the players that club have done in that time is incredible.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more with that, Josh. I've been mentioning Hornets quite a few times on the National 2 West sections of this show. They have made a brilliant start, a really strong start to this season. And you mentioned a brilliant point about Redruth in terms of them sort of bouncing back from that result earlier in the season against Old Reds to beat Luctonians. And in a way, Redruth have showed that bounce back ability again over in November. They lost to Devonport Services, but picked up two pretty crucial wins against Macclesfield, and I think it was Hinckley as well before the break before December. So two really good teams to pick out there, Josh. And just coming on to the fixtures this weekend, just on a couple of the teams Josh mentioned before, as he quite rightly pointed out, Hornets are at home this weekend to Devonport Services, and as we mentioned, Devonport come into that game off the back of 2 consecutive home wins, but they'll be out to try and secure a first away success of the season on Saturday afternoon. And he also mentioned Redruth, who are looking to build on those back-to-back wins that I mentioned when they take on a Taunton side, but that's going to be very difficult with the second place club having won all 5 of their home games thus far. But I guess, Josh, one of the fixtures of the weekend, and you did highlight it a little bit before, is Camborne going up against Clifton, 2 of the top 3 sides in action on Saturday. It's a 2 p.m. kickoff, by the way, for anybody who's thinking of heading down to that game in Cornwall. I know elsewhere it's been publicised as a 2:30 game kickoff, but it is a 2 p.m. game. But it probably goes back to what you said at the top, Josh, that it's such a competitive league, it's such a high standard of league, and this game to kick off the Christmas period feels like an early Christmas present, doesn't it?
More like a Christmas cracker.
Nice. So much better than me, Josh. So much better than me.
No, definitely. And I think it's like you said earlier, the cost of those teams, 4 teams, 9 points in it. And any side to win, if Camborne get the win, they could really increase their lead. While of course, if Clifton get the win, they really move them behind them. And if you think about it, anything could happen. If Taunton win 2, there could only be 1 point between the 3 sides, or at least at 2. It's a very closely competitive. It's hard to call, but I would love to see how Camborne now do after last week's defeat. It's important to have the 9 wins out of 10, but then to lose last week, they'll want to win. They want to get back to winning ways, and it's going to be such a way. But against the side who've won their last 6 games, it's going to be a real top of the title clash.
Yeah.
Sorry, top of the table clash.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you, Josh. I mean, you've summed it up pretty perfectly. The tabletoppers will be looking for an instant response. They did show that earlier in the season when they were beaten by Loughborough and went on that winning run before. Josh rightly said at the top, they were beaten by Cinderford last weekend. And Clifton are one of the form teams in the league at the moment, and the Lavender and Blacks will be looking to change the dynamic again at the top of the National 2 West tree on Saturday afternoon. Again, it is a 2 p.m. kickoff between Camborne and Clifton. Elsewhere then, just to wrap up the National 2 West segment of the show, Cinderford, who beat Camborne last week, go to Bourneville, and just behind Bourneville in the table are 11th place Exeter University, who host Luctonians. Elsewhere, Loughborough Students take on Macclesfield. The Students are without a win in the last 7 games, but have the opportunity to put that right against Mac in the Midlands. And Mac sit 5 points behind 12th place Hinckley at the moment, with Chris Campbell's troops travelling to 6th placed Old Redcliffians in round 12. So it's been a bumper edition of the National League Rugby preview show this week, slightly longer than usual, but I hope you can forgive us because it feels like a big weekend and a brilliant way to kick off the Christmas period in National League Rugby. Don't forget, if you are unable to attend Rams versus Richmond at Old Bath Road on Friday night in National 1, you will be able to watch the game live on YouTube for free via our friends at Next Gen 15, who have linked up with Rams to make this possible. So a link to the game itself will be in the description of this video. And if it isn't already, it will also be on our social media channels. Don't forget, it's a 7:45 p.m. kickoff between Rams and Richmond. Please do follow us across our various social media platforms as well, and also do like and share our content on YouTube. Don't forget as well to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel too. We are closing in on 2,600 subscribers, so it would be nice to take another step towards 3,000 heading towards Christmas. Do visit our website for all the latest reviews, previews and interviews. There's currently a nice piece on there with Harlequins winger Caden Murley, who is actually part of the Richmond backroom staff this season. He's been doing some work with Richmond at the Athletic Ground, so it feels like a good week, doesn't it, with Richmond playing Rams, to see what his thoughts are on the National 1 title race as well as National League Rugby in general. Do also check out our website for all the latest results that come in from Friday night and Saturday afternoon this week. We pride ourselves in making it the quickest way to find out all the results across National 1 and National 2. So do visit our website to see what has happened in round 12, and also do continue to check out talkingrugbyunion.co.uk for all the latest rugby news. So I think that is all the admin done for this week. So thanks so much for watching this jam-packed show this week on the National League Rugby Preview Show, and strap yourselves in for what is set to be a thrilling round 12.